Good afternoon, Bournemouth fans. Day 20 in the AFC Bournemouth office. And how are we doing on this Friday? I have Aaron with me. Happy Friday, Aaron.
Hey Kirk, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm just outside Vitality Stadium. Appreciate anyone that's currently joining us live now on YouTube and Twitter. And we thought we'd just do a very short, instant, raw reaction to the latest media reports that AFC Bournemouth will take their recruitment of a new manager into next week. Chris Temple said, I understand that at AFC Bournemouth are currently continuing extensive talks with more than one managerial candidate. Lots of top jobs vacant at the moment, which makes it an interesting market. Aaron, we were expecting a manager by today. Well, that's what Jeff said last week.
Well, first and foremost, is it a drive-through interview process, and you're currently in the big queue for the interview? So it looks like. Yeah. I mean, you obviously had some reaction to Jeff's interview last week, and a lot's been said about that. And we were thinking potentially we're coming towards the end of the process. And the one real name that's been mentioned, the only real name that's been mentioned, was Scott Parker, from an external point of view. And then there are various reports coming out again earlier this week saying we might be missing out on him, etc. But again, it's all talk in the Sun and other newspapers. And then obviously Chris Temple, who we do like to think of as an authoritative source, obviously dropped that tweet this morning. And yeah, so obviously it looks like it's going to go into next week, and we are in extensive talks with a number of candidates. The question is that spin again? We've been here before with the world class list we had prior to Jonathan Woodgate's appointment. And are we there again, or is this genuinely now taking their time, not rushing it? Obviously, we're all frustrated and want to know what's going on, but maybe they are taking their time, not rushing anything, and being rigorous in their process, which is what we all wanted them to be. So I guess the proof's going to be in the pudding when we find out maybe next week who it actually is going to be.
I hope the stream's okay, because I'm outside the Vitality Stadium, and 4G can always be a bit hit and miss. So hopefully the stream's coming through for you guys. But let us know what you think, and I'll try and drop some comments on the screen. But like you said, I mean, it looked like Parker was the front runner. Now we're hearing that potentially there's no talks with Parker, but there seems to be one more candidate at least involved. I mean, what must Jonathan Woodgate be thinking right now? Is it like, well, it's me then if you can't get anyone else?
Yeah, it's a difficult one for him. Obviously, his contract runs out at the end of June. I'm not sure whether his coaching contract or whatever he was initially hired for is up, or what to deal with that, or whether his contract per se with the club is up at the end of June. But I mean, it's quite clear, unless obviously this is all spin, as I say, that if this is all genuine, that Jonathan Woodgate must realise again he's not the preferred candidate, or that's how it seems, or that's certainly how it looks to us. So it's a difficult one from his perspective, I guess. As with anything, he has to wait and go through due process. As you mentioned before, the Daily Echo put something out today claiming that something in the Athletic was saying that we hadn't even officially approached Scott Parker. So I don't know if that's absolute nonsense or not, because all kind of good sources at the club and even Chris Temple intimated that there certainly was interest in Parker. So I'd be amazed if we hadn't officially contacted him. If we hadn't officially contacted him, then who are we even talking about? Wagner's obviously turned West Brom down and now gone to, I think it's Young Boys in Switzerland. Nuno turned Palace down, but I don't think he'd even be looking at giving us a second look. And another thing that was intimated again in the Echo, and again in Chris Temple's tweet, were extensive talks with a number of candidates. And but the fact that there are other jobs available at the moment, Everton, Palace, looks like Tottenham is coming to a conclusion of some sort, is muddying the process somewhat. Now that could indicate to us that we are looking at and potentially interviewing candidates who those clubs will be interested in, which would be good news. If we're looking at the same candidates as someone who thinks they could get the Everton job, then that's obviously good news. I'm not sure what else that would actually mean, because would someone who with lower leagues would be even be interested in those jobs? So yeah, I mean there's mixed views on Parker. We've had absolutely nothing official on that. No news from Fulham on that. And all we've got to go on is that we are interviewing an extensive list of candidates. For as far as we know, that could be Jonathan Woodgate, Gary O'Neill, Sean Cooper and Steve Purchase.
And you talked about other clubs potentially causing an issue for us in recruitment. Now, call me deluded if you're watching this right now, and it might be just hope, but could potentially AFC Bournemouth be asking Eddie Howe, what is your situation? And for Eddie Howe, it seems like no one is coming forward to wanting to give him a break. And if that's the case, it might be a risk, but I think any job that Eddie Howe takes will be a risk. His next job, he's got to make it work. But could this be the reason we're running into a fourth week now?
Well, you'd like to think that they've broached the subject with him. From Eddie Howe's perspective, as I think I've alluded to before, I've no doubt that in his heart he obviously still loves the club. I fail to believe he really wanted to leave last summer, although he clearly needed a break and was literally on his feet. To play devil's advocate, though, much as I would absolutely love Eddie Howe to come back, I feel that he's too clever and astute for that, which could be to our detriment, because he knows that if he comes back to us now and doesn't succeed, that's career suicide for me. Because, as you say, it looks like some of the top, the higher clubs aren't willing to take a punt on him now. If he came back to us for a third time and didn't succeed like he did last time, and he could be finished. So I think for his own career, he needs another job. Now, I'm sure in the short term, he has absolutely no need, money-wise, financially-wise, to work. Probably doesn't need to work for quite a few years, in all honesty, if not ever again. And the thing about Eddie Howe is he wants to run the club from top to bottom, and he will not take a job unless he has that, however long he has to wait. He might well have that at Bournemouth. He has his backroom staff already here, which he was desperate to potentially take to Celtic with him. He has the location where he doesn't have to move his young family. But I still think Eddie's too clever for that. Even if his heart's telling him to come back, I think his head is too screwed on for that, and he knows that he'll bide his time and wait for a role which will suit him. I'm sure in the future he'll come back, and that's for a different day. But as far as the club approaching him, well, I'm sure I'm amazed that the conversation hasn't taken place, but I just can't see it for all those reasons I've mentioned.
Okay, so let's just go back then a week ago when Alex Crook came out and said next Friday, AFC Bournemouth should be confirming their next manager. Jeff said we're in the final stages of recruiting our next manager. So has something changed in your head or your heart in that week? And if they go for Woodgate, how frustrating might it be for the AFC Bournemouth fans?
Well, yeah, the delay might not be good news. It potentially something has gone wrong, whether that be Parker has said no, or any other candidates that indeed were front runners have turned the job down, maybe waiting for Palace or Everton, or just the fact that the club wasn't the right fit for them. So the fact that we are now into the fourth week, as you say, potentially screams bad news that the initial priorities targets have said no, in which case we kind of not need to start again, but need to think again and not rush into making the obvious appointment. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If Jonathan Woodgate was given the job 2 days after the Brentford defeat, I don't think I personally would have been massively disappointed, because I still think he merited a shot at it. And the argument was that if he had been there all season, we might have got promoted, despite a lot of flaws, which I obviously openly admit as well, some tactical issues, etc. But the fact that it's now been almost 4 weeks, and as you said at the beginning, that if they wanted Jonathan Woodgate 100%, he would. I'd be amazed if he wouldn't take it. So they would have offered it to him already, which means that he obviously isn't a priority. Which means that if he is now offered the job, no disrespect to him, of course, it would mean that we obviously failed on 1, 2, 3, 4 better candidates for either they not wanting to come or the board mucking things up again or whatever it might be. So I think a lot of Bournemouth fans, although not totally against Jonathan Woodgate himself, would think that the way the whole process has gone would mean that would not be good news for the football club.
And the final point I want to make on this short stream is, in the time that we're trying to solve this manager problem, players are being purchased by other clubs. You've got free transfers, players deciding whether to stay with their current clubs, move on. And as I've said before, we know we've got Richard Hughes and technical people behind the scenes trying to pull new players into the club. But if you're a football player, you're going to want to know who you're playing for, because ultimately you're going to be guaranteed football. And are we being left behind, delaying this further and further?
Yeah, potentially. I do think, though, that, obviously it's the Euros now. Quite a lot of our players, indeed, two of our players, are obviously away with their squads in the Euros, and other players are on holiday, etc. So I still think, as long as it's concluded next week, for me, I think we shouldn't be too far behind on that side of things. And so hopefully that wouldn't be too detrimental. Obviously, if it runs on to the end of June, then clearly that's going to be a huge issue. But we would like to think it'll be concluded next week. Now, again, the board have decisions to make. If priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and even priority 4 are not forthcoming, do they then think, panic and then appoint Jonathan Woodgate, or again, even potentially go for Stephen Purchase and Sean Cooper, which has been mentioned? As qualified as they are, it's the internal appointment again, which we've always seemed to go down. Don't even forget that Eddie Howe initially was a poor internal appointment, which happened to be the best thing we ever did in our history. But at the time, he was the cheap internal appointment. So when was the last time Bournemouth didn't do that? You have to cast your minds back many, many, many years. So it will be very Bournemouthy to, again, go on about taking Fulham's manager, or Wagner, or this one or that one, and everything else, and managers who are interested in Everton, etc., and then land back within our own internal structure again. If it happened again, it wouldn't surprise me. But this time, as you said, and as many people have said, we had one shot last season. We've got half a shot in this season, and then that really potentially could be it. So they've got to get it right, and we're in their hands.
All right, quickly let us know then. This is probably the 4th time that we've done it for you, AFC Bournemouth fans currently watching in the chat. Who do you think the new manager will be? Hopefully confirmed next week. We'll see. Aaron, where are you at right now? We've had a few conversations based on this now. Do you think the manager position will be filled come Friday next week? And who do you think will be in that hot seat?
I think it will be filled by next Friday. It might not be, obviously, but I think it probably will be. I really honestly don't know. And, in the past, I've given a name. For the reasons we mentioned before, I don't think it's going to be Jonathan Woodgate now. My worry is it would end up with someone worse than him, but I don't think it's going to be him for a lot of reasons that we've already mentioned. I'm not convinced on Scott Parker anymore. Not convinced as in I don't want him, but I'm not convinced he's going to be coming. But then I'm not sure who we're talking about. People, I've seen someone like Michael Appleton mentioned. There's obviously plenty of lower league managers, but right now, in all honesty, I think the right thing for me to say is, like a lot of us, I have not got a clue.
Yeah, I'm about in that boat now. The Parker one seems to be further away than it ever was. The Woodgate, I'll be happy to give him a chance, but it's not the appointment for me. So let's see who's going to come through the door. The comments seem to be coming through in dribs and drabs, but you will be able to watch this back, and I will look at who you think the next AFC Bournemouth manager will be. But Aaron, I appreciate you joining me on this very short live stream outside the Vitality Stadium on a Friday.
Well, if you could stay there for another week or so, just sitting there, you might find out before any of us.
And thank you to you, the fans, for checking out this latest stream. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. I think we're 9 subscribers away from 450. And you can also become a AFC Bournemouth or Cherries Red Army supporter as well. You can check that out in the About section of YouTube. So, yeah, appreciate that. Enjoy your Friday. Euros are starting this weekend, so there, at least we can take our mind off it for a little bit. But until the next video, from me and Aaron, we'll see you soon. Up the Cherries.